Yeah, we're going live now. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Raza Abid, and I'm the program officer at the Center for Excellence in Journalism at IBA. Uh, with CEJ together with ICRC is organizing this webinar to discuss how journalism is being used and can be used to counter misinformation around the COVID-19 vaccination. This session will be moderated by Sana Batul. Sana is a Master of Science in Journalism program alum at IBA. She's also an independent journalist and contributes regularly to GW and BBC Urdu. Sana will be moderating the session today. In the panel today, we have a very diverse panel, and we thought to reach out to journalists from across the region to discuss what is going on in our neighboring countries. So from India, we have Mr. Naveen Garewal. We have Amantha Pereira from Sri Lanka and Mr. Nurul Islam Hasif from Bangladesh. And from Pakistan, we have Zofin Ibrahim. And I will, before handing it over to Sana to start a discussion, we will be doing a question answer sessions at the end. So if you could post your questions in the comments, and we will take it right at the end of the session. I'll hand over the discussion to Sana now.
Thank you, Fizza. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on using journalism to counter misinformation on COVID-19 vaccination. As Fizza said, that I'm an independent journalist and also an alumna for Center for Excellence in Journalism. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by our amazing panel of journalists from South Asia. First of all, I would like to introduce my guests. Today, we have with us Zofin Ibrahim, who is an independent journalist based in Karachi and contributes to National Daily Dawn and internationally to the Reuters Foundation, The Guardian, and The Third Pole. From Bangladesh, we have Nurul Islam Hasif, special correspondent for Bangladesh Post. Amantha Pereira has joined us today from Melbourne. He's a researcher. He's from Sri Lanka and is a researcher at the School of Education, the Arts, CQ University, and he's currently researching the confluence of online trauma threats faced by journalists during COVID-19 linked lockdowns. He's also a regional coordinator at DART, Center Asia Pacific. His work of journalism have appeared in Time, The Guardian, The Washington Post, Reuters, and Al Jazeera. From India, we have on our panel with us Mr. Naveen Garewal, who is a Chief of Bureau, South India of the Tribune. He has established his credentials as a serious journalist reporting for 3 decades from all North Indian states and is now overseeing reportage from the 5 Indian states of Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu. Thank you for joining us today for this panel discussion. So as COVID-19 spreads, there are other viruses or pandemics also spreading in parallel. And whether I should call them viruses, these are the pandemics of misinformation, mistrust, fake news, uncertainty, confusion. And this has become a point of concern for many journalists, especially in this part of the world, because in the given circumstances when many journalists are not trained to be the health reporters or cover health beats. So to cover this, I would say disinfodemic, rightly titled by the United Nations, the journalists are facing a lot of problems. So I will begin this discussion by asking my guests to tell us briefly about the COVID and vaccination situation in their country. I would ask Naveen sir to actually initiate this discussion and tell us what are the challenges the journalists in India with regards to misinformation on COVID-19 vaccination are facing, especially in the current situation when the country is hit by this deadly pandemic wave. So, Naveen sir.
Thank you, Sana. Let me start by confessing that media does not have any in-depth knowledge about the virus because media people are not doctors. In fact, even the world today, comprising of many doctors too, do not really know what this virus is, because every time they try to find something about the virus changes its form and re-emerges in another format. So we've had the original virus, we've had the UK variant, we've had the India variant, we now have something called the Andhra Pradesh variant, which is supposed to be 15 times more virulent than the regular virus. And I must at the same time say that neither the government nor the vaccine manufacturers have made any efforts to educate the media so that they can in turn go and educate the people. So the media is actually educating itself by hits and trials. And they learn from TV shows, from articles, from interviews with experts. Coming to India, the media or the journalists don't fit into any scheme of things as far as the government is concerned. They have not till date been declared the frontline warriors. No journalist, a majority of them being with the age group of 18 to 44, have been vaccinated. And when I say this, what I'm implying is that every journalist that's out there, doing the work, they are exposing themselves, and they do not have a protection through the vaccination. So all that one hears about the vaccine is all negative stuff, that they lead to blood clots, they lead to heart attacks, they have side effects, they have prolonged exhaustion, they have many, many other side effects. And there is nothing that really, is done to dispel all that. Especially India, I must tell you, has two vaccines. One is the AstraZeneca, which is the Covishield, and the second is a domestically produced vaccine called Covaxin, made by Bharat Biotech. Now, when you have the international media reporting that countries like Germany, France, Italy, Sweden, etc., have stopped giving AstraZeneca because there have been some clots in people, people get scared. So the hesitance towards vaccine gets stronger. Nobody ever reports what the WHO says, that out of 17 million people vaccinated in the UK with AstraZeneca, there were only 40 reported cases with blood clots. It's a very good thing to give vaccines to the neighboring countries. India has been exporting vaccines to 95 countries, which includes the 7 neighbors. But this also is not, free of another thing. When you are giving vaccines to a neighboring country, people start thinking that you are not giving vaccine to your own people, but you're giving vaccines to a neighboring country or to others. So there may be something wrong with the vaccine. And to top it all, there is no public data available about the vaccine trials. Most of these vaccines have been brought under the emergency use regulation. So that itself causes some kind of, hesitance and something which doesn't make people very confident getting the vaccine. I'm taking little time just to explain this, because India is number 2 country in the world today with the virus, and we are almost getting 400,000 new cases every day. And with about 20 million people already infected, we are still looking at ways to counter the wave. So like I said, we have 2 vaccines mainly. One is the Covishield and the other is the domestically produced Covaxin. The total number of people that have been vaccinated in India so far over the last 5 months or so, the vaccination drive started in January sometime. So we vaccinated about 158 million people. Out of that, 17 million people have received both shots of the vaccine. Now, sounds very good, but when you compare this to the total number of people that have been vaccinated in the country so far, it's only 1.3%, which is absolutely minuscule. And the herd immunity is when people, 60 to 65% people get either the vaccine or are infected and they've developed antibodies. So there are a lot of myths and a lot of things that people don't know. The efficacy of the vaccine is claimed to be 63% for Covishield and 81% for Covaxin. Now, a lot of people don't want to get the other vaccine because they say the efficiency is low, but they don't really understand what is the efficacy, what does it mean. So, and also because we are in a health crisis at the moment, nobody really has the time to explain and tell people what these things mean. So basically the number of vaccines the government has ordered. So these two companies that are producing the vaccine in India are private companies. They are not government establishments. So you really can't tell them what to do. You can only place an order like it's a commercial venture. You ask them for a number of vaccines and they will give it to you. So the number of vaccines that have been ordered in the 3 phases so far is only 346 million doses. Compare that to 1.38 billion people. I mean, even India is not, and we are producing this vaccine within the country. We are not dependent on anybody for the vaccine. So despite that, what I'm trying to say is that it's a very little population that's actually getting the benefits of the vaccine. Now, coming to the topic of the day, the misinformation and journalism. I think the biggest threat to the COVID vaccine is fake news and misinformation. The WHO has termed this as infodemic, which means fake news on social media primarily. And when you have national leaders like former US President Mr. Donald Trump himself saying that, just use a disinfectant, use a Lysol, and that'll kill the, virus, and it's nothing really. This really leads to a lot of, people believing that the virus is nothing really serious. But if you happen to see what's happening in India, there are about 3,500 deaths every day, which is no joke. It's huge, and it's heartbreaking, the way young people are dying for lack of oxygen or maybe lack of knowledge how to deal with this, or mails on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or WhatsApp educating how people should treat themselves, self-medication. I think the WhatsApp University has spread a lot of disinformation compared to the real media, which is the print or the television or the online media, the serious online media. The politicians have done their bit in spreading disinformation. Like, for example, in India, they've been saying, drink cow urine and this will lead to a cure. And these are elected members of the assembly or members of parliament. And it's not like ordinary people. So, I mean, people like that saying anything is taken very seriously. I don't know if you're aware of yoga guru Ramdev. He runs a company called Patanjali. They came out with a medicine, within quotes, a medicine called Coronil, which claimed that it cured corona. So when the mainstream media questioned the company, they said, well, this is only an immunity booster. So a lot of this has, the virus and the establishments have, a lot of them have turned into commercial activities. It's a humanitarian thing which has, gone haywire, and there's a lot of misconception. In fact, there's a study published in the British Medical Journal, that says social media and vaccine hesitancy are very closely related to each other. People who follow, YouTube and other channels closely are more hesitant to take the vaccine. So there are so many untrue news stories going around, primarily on the social media. Some of them all of you have heard, like the vaccine is nothing but a way to implant a microchip, or the vaccine alters your DNA, or if women take the vaccine, they become infertile. So, I mean, there's so many things that are happening. Uh, See, like I mentioned before, the report about AstraZeneca causing blood clotting is the headline. But there is absolutely, what happened in India is some people died within a day or 2 days of taking the vaccine. So there were headlines saying that person dies after taking the vaccine. But at no level was any effort made, either by the government or by anybody else, to have an autopsy of the person who died and come out with a report whether the person actually died of the vaccine, or was it an underlying heart issue or some other issue that triggered the death, and it only coincided with the taking of the vaccine. So coming to how the media can help, the media has to educate itself. I'm sorry to say, the world at this point of time is not really interested in educating the media or telling them what they should do or how they should report. Like I told you, media is not even considered to be a frontline worker or a person who should get a vaccine, because they are standing with the cops, with the doctors, with almost every other frontline worker and doing the job, but minus the protection. The WHO recently held, course for journalists, a 1-week course where they were educated. So I think we have to learn for ourselves. We have to read well-researched articles. We have to counter misinformation by producing relevant work based on data, based on facts. A lot of Indian media houses are actually doing that. Like, for example, the NDTV, which is one of the main English television channels here, they have a program called F by U, for your information, where they actually pick up a topic related to COVID and actually explain the total, nuts and bolts, the details about the whole thing. Then I think, specifically coming down to the vaccine, one big thing that media can do is do stories of people who've contracted COVID before taking a vaccine and after taking a vaccine. So what you actually see is that people who've taken one shot and then people who have taken 2 shots, the lung damage is much less in those people compared to the lung damage in people who've taken no shot at all.
Yeah, thanks, Naveen. We would like
I
to
think just winding up. Yeah. So that's what we have headlines out of all wrong things, but when there's a fact, we just try to ignore it. So I think we have to understand that and take it on from there.
Yeah, we'll take your valuable comments on this as well further in the discussion.
Sure.
I would like to ask Amanta, how is the situation in Sri Lanka, especially in the case when COVID-19 and related to COVID-19 vaccination situation, and what are the challenges that the journalists in Sri Lanka are facing at the moment? Good.
Yeah, I think Naveen really painted the grim picture that is engulfing the whole subcontinent. The numbers in Sri Lanka may look minuscule to what we just heard from India, but comparatively, given the population size, the size of the country, and also the fact that Sri Lanka is a very densely populated country around the coast, the situation is probably at its worst in the last year when this pandemic broke out. So just to give a snapshot, from around April 21st, which is a week after the traditional New Year celebrations in Sri Lanka, the case numbers have spiked. So on the 21st of April, there were only 367 infections. And by yesterday, the figure had reached 1,923. Now that's a huge spike for such, number one, for such a small country, and within such a small time frame, a short time frame. In that time also, the number of PCR tests and also the number of vaccinations have correspondingly gone up, and we have to admit that. But the issue that is at play here is whether the authorities and the health authorities are playing catch up, whether they waited till the numbers to go up and the spike to be registered in the test results to kind of put in strict lockdown procedures and increase the testing mechanisms. So the country is still not in lockdown. There is still free movement. There are local lockdowns. There are local lockdowns that are lifted. There are local lockdowns that are in place. And there are also vigilante lockdowns, which means residents in an area or a road will lock down the area and say no one can come in. So that's the situation. Now, to go back to the scenario of information, let me, because Naveen described the current situation pretty clearly, and Sri Lanka is the same, where the factual information on the pandemic, on the spread, is countered by everything from fiction to fake news to misinformation to disinformation. We've had a syrup that members of parliament, including the health minister, have taken in parliament to show that, okay, this can prevent COVID or this cures COVID. And there were people lining up to take that. And it's only now that the health ministry say, no, it's not doing any such thing. We've also had the numbers that are coming out have been questioned because, as we all know, living in the South Asian region, we know how numbers can be cooked by any government to suit its purposes and agendas. So, but if you go back before the pandemic, like say before all this hit, the media has been trying to grapple with this sense that anybody, anywhere, with access to the internet can put out information, fake, misinformation, disinformation, anything. Now, what we've faced is the media has not figured out how to deal with this. We haven't figured out how to put out authentic information and stand firm and stand our ground to say, this is the information that we've got. And this also relates to the fact that the trust on the media, the public trust on media has been eroding. Now, before I wind up, one more thing that I want to just add to the conversation is that we paint a very grim picture. The numbers are going up, the infections are going up, there is misinformation, there is fake news, there are all kinds of anti-vaxxers, there are quacks who are trying to sell medicine, there are yoga masters who are trying to make a buck, all that. But I have been involved in a research that is looking at journalism during COVID. Now, one of the things that has kind of been quite stark is the value journalists place on their job, and also our audiences play on the value of authentic information. So the value or the desire for authentic information has gone up. Despite all this, despite the fake news, despite this pandemic, despite the infodemic. So what we are seeing is that there is an urge within the whole large global community for information. And now that is something that the media needs to fill. How we do that is the option. How we do that as professional media workers is what we need to figure out now. But the information we put out or we don't put out could mean life and death right? Not only to someone thousands of miles away, probably to our neighbor. So I think we need to clearly look at how we can keep reporting and also make sure that our reporting reaches the population that is in dire need of this kind of truthful information. Thank you.
Thanks, Lanka. It was very insightful and positive message. Um, I would like to ask Nurul to share some thoughts on how the situation is different in Bangladesh, or is it the same?
So thank you. I would say it's not all the same thing. So, but first of all, I must thank the Center for Excellence in Journalism and the International Committee of the Red Cross for organizing this session. So it's a timely session, I would say, because since the vaccination campaign is going on in our countries and across the world, and in this age of social media, it's very easy to spread false or inaccurate information with an aim to deceive people. And so professional journalists have definitely they have a very big role in this world's largest vaccination campaign to help people know the correct information. So if I speak briefly about the COVID situation in Bangladesh, we are now facing what our scientists call it the second wave of the pandemic, and new cases are rising every day, but it's under control because we had about 23% positive cases, 22 to 23% positive cases of the samples tested in a day, even weeks ago. But after enforcing a lockdown, though it's not so strictly enforced, but despite that, that positive rate has come down to 8 to 9%. So every day we get an update from the government, so which gives an official picture of the last 24 hours. So yesterday we had 1,914 new cases, and during the period, 61 people lost their lives due to COVID. So it's official figure, I would say, and the rate was 8.71%. The positive rate was 8.71% of the total 21,984 samples tested during the 24 hours. So our government is doing mostly the PCR test, and recently introduced antigen test in some areas where it's difficult to do PCR test. And regarding the vaccination, initially I would say we are lucky that we got the vaccine much earlier than many other countries in the world, and that's why I would thank our Prime Minister, who was actively looking for options to get the vaccine as soon as it is available. So the government bought Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine from Serum Institute of India. So we started the campaign. We got the vaccine in January. Started the campaign in early February. So and by the time we vaccinated over 8 million people with the first dose, but now giving the first dose is temporarily halted due to the supply gap. Now the government is giving the second dose only because they are not getting the expected supply from the Serum Institute of the Oxford vaccine. So by this time, the drug regulators, they have given permission to Russian and Chinese vaccine. Usually, in our drug regulations rules, we usually give approval to those drugs or vaccines which have WHO pre-qualification or US FDA approval, or at least to approval two certificates from the European Union authorities. But this time, because of the situation, the government gave emergency approval to Russian and Chinese vaccine. So India also, and those vaccines, those companies are also, our companies are also discussing with those companies for options to produce those in Bangladesh, because we have a very big pharmaceutical line, so we have the capacity to, our pharmaceutical companies have the capacity to produce those vaccines if they get the technology transferred from those companies. So India also offered co-production of Covaxin in Bangladesh, and government is also, exploring options to get vaccine from the Pfizer and Moderna. The problem is that in those vaccine, Pfizer and Moderna, so maintaining cold chain will be very difficult for us. So this is the situation of like vaccine and COVID in Bangladesh.
Thank you, Nurul. Uh, um, Naveen talked about the vaccine hesitancy in Pakistan, in South Asia. So I would like to ask Zofine to share some thoughts on this problem in Pakistan, since vaccines have always been like subject to great conspiracies in Pakistan. So if you could talk about what's the biggest challenge with misinformation that the journalists face in Pakistan. Zofine? Is she there?
Yeah, she needs to unmute herself.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I just want to apologize for my earlier, my internet got disconnected. I got disconnected. So my apologies for that. And I would like to start this by first telling Naveen and everyone else that my heart goes out to India. And so are lots of prayers for your country. And also the fear is that if we don't learn any lessons from India, we may face the same issue very soon. So to your question, Sana, I would first like to, give, everybody has given a little bit synopsis of the vaccine situation. So I would just like to also tell you that, we're probably very late in the rollout we were, and I think that what I know from the news reports is that we've I mean our Asad Umar, our a spokesperson for the COVID situation, just informed yesterday that uh, n- only 0.2 million people have so far been vaccinated, although over 5 million have registered since yesterday. So while we were slow, we are getting there, but it's still a very, very tricky situation because the government claims that by the end of the year, we would have 50% of people vaccinated, but it doesn't seem like that because we still not many people are going there. But if you look at a Gallup survey of March, it said that 87% of Pakistanis said that none of their family members had gotten vaccinated. Uh, but it may have changed, for all we know, because since the beginning of this month, we have opened vaccination for people. I think 40 plus will also get vaccinated soon, or are getting vaccinated now. And what we also learn from people is that the procedure at the vaccination center is pretty smooth, is very well taken care. People are very well taken care of, and so that I think this organizing that took some time, but we are I think we are in a good place right now. The only thing is that the vaccine has to be made available, which probably is not there. Not now that the people are ready, we need to have the vaccines. So why I said in the beginning that the situation is grim here is also because there have been more than 18,000 deaths, and in April only 3,000 deaths. So that's like, the spike has been just too big for us to handle. And we will not be able to handle like India was not able to handle, because our healthcare system is like such that for one doctor per 963 people. So can you imagine that what a strain it will be if we have a situation like India? So now we come to your question about misinformation, and what the biggest challenge I think for a journalist I see is that for many journalists, this is also the pandemic is so new. Not only are we fighting the virus, we are also fighting, as everyone has already said, disinformation and fake news and misinformation, but also interpreting data. This is all very scientific for us. So interpreting and understanding and to be able to put it in a manner that the lay person can also understand is a challenge, frankly. And the other thing is the ethical angle also. You know, I have seen several reports coming from India, and because it's shown on our TV as well, that how many, you know, they're like showing women and men, they're on their last breaths and they're showing all that. So I don't know, you know, we forget the ethical angle in just to hold the government accountable. But I think we need to hold ourselves accountable as well, and not lose the semblance of how to cover such a big tragedy. So other than that, I think we have to tell people, you know, we have to tell people, and we have to understand that there is nothing definitive about the information that is being given to the people. It is for that moment that the doctors have told us. But even the doctors are learning on the way. So we must understand. And so people don't need to be aggressive and don't need to say that this was, you know, this is what we were told. How come this is changed? Because things are changing also. We also, everyone has to be, I think, on the same page. In Pakistan, the situation is such, still is, even before when the pandemic started, and even now with the vaccination, that there is a lot of you know, provincial and federation, there's a tussle between the provinces, at least between Sindh and the center. So that is causing a lot of kind of, you know, in anxiety among people. We don't know where to go. So if there was one messaging which is coming from the center, and that should be good and that should be authentic, then people will generally trust that. So we have not been able to overcome that issue, and I think that politics should be set aside in our case.
Yeah.
So we are getting mixed messages. So for example, you know, our in Sindh, the health minister said that, you know, there are the two variants that have come from Brazil and South Africa. They may not be able to our vaccine, the vaccine that we are getting, will not be able to handle the two other variants, and so it will be ineffective. Now that, you know, coming from the health minister was giving very wrong signals. And then the health people, you know, the doctors had to come on board and say, no, it will protect, so please get yourself jabbed. What else? Yes, people have, I mean, Naveen and Amanta and Nurul have already talked about myths and information. You know, we also, I was talking to the JPMC head here and yesterday, and she was telling me exactly what Naveen said about DNA changing, about impotency, even impotency in males and infertility in women. And you know, and in fact, you know, but she said that, you know, even then, even so, that was, you know, about a month ago. Now, like yesterday, I spoke to her to get information for our panel, and she said that, you know, we have a huge queue of people coming, and we even had the vaccine, and so she sounded very optimistic. Our other problem is that you know, because today we were going to talk about social media and digital media. The problem with combating or countering fake news is that a lot of the times this messaging is in our national or even regional language. So, you know, we cannot report, or there is also very few people who are reporting to companies who are running these social media platforms. So they cannot control that. So I think people like us, we need to be more proactive. People who are, you know, on the social media, they need to be more proactive and report, which would really help.
I was about to ask this question about social media and digital technologies. That, you know, what role they play, the crucial role of SMDTs in actually whether they perpetuate the misinformation or they are remedying or providing solution. solution for that. So if you want to talk about it, then you can, and then we can take this question toward
So I just wanted
Naveen.
to just Sana, just wanted to end. I mean, I have lots to say, but just about this thing, I just wanted to say that you cannot stop misinformation. You need to counter it in the same manner, on the same platform. Now, how you do it, you have to be far more intelligent and do it in a far more attractive way, so that people listen to your messaging and people believe in you. And so I wanted to give you the example of WHO and UK government's collaboration on BBC. So BBC used different platforms. They used apps, they used their electronic media, they used digital media, they used newspapers, maybe the television, and they kind of they would come up with countering myths in the beginning when the pandemic started. This was 2020. We can do the same with our vaccine coverage and vaccine hesitancy and combating anti-vaxxers in the same manner. And I also wanted to tell you that I have a few points about how what all we can do. I don't know if people know that in Singapore recently, there's been a song that has become a big hit. It's a rap song by two very prominent and very popular, I think, some soap opera stars. And so I think that even for Pakistan, if we have a nice jingle with coming on as a PSA, or even a jingle for an advertisement with a message.
We do have a ringtone SMS and
yeah, we do, and people have gotten tired. I'm talking about something which stays in your mind, which you start play, which just refuses to get out of your mind. Also, something like that. And I mean, that would be such a nice way of hammering the message into people's mind. And I think another that we can tell people, when something is in short supply, people want to go and get it. So if we can say that this is a golden chance for Pakistanis, because even globally this vaccine is in short supply and it is free. So why don't you get it, get yourself done? Then another point could be that there is a travel ban, and people who will not get vaccinated, they may not be able to travel. The other could be that you cannot meet your relatives. You cannot even right now we have we'll have a stricter interprovincial ban. So this could be an opportunity. There was just one very important message that I thought that, and I think Naveen alluded to it also, but he was talking about people who've already gotten corona. I was thinking that even people who are getting vaccinated, if they are 2 or 3 days later, if they are if we get them to talk about how they feel, what are the side effects, so people can relate to it, because they will know this is the truth. So there can be side effects also. We are not hiding anything. And there may not be for some people. It all depends on a person's body and how he or she reacts to the vaccine. So I think that can have a really good impact. So these are some of the few points, and maybe I can elaborate on something more if you want to.
Yeah, sure. So going back to Naveen, at this point, if we are talking about social media and digital technologies, there's a lot that has been shared on social media during this ongoing wave of coronavirus pandemic in India. Would you like to share some thoughts on that? What is the role of social media and digital technology? Has it perpetuated the misinformation, or has it remedying it? If Naveen could talk about it.
Yeah. Okay, Sana. So I don't think it's right to just paint the social media black, because in difficult, tiring times, there are a lot of things that do get conveyed through the social media. Now, I'll tell you, for example, a lot of the negative side is that there's a lot of junk going around, and you really don't know what's true and what's untrue. But at the same time, the social media has also come up with a lot of good information, which comes firsthand from people in authority, with people who know There are doctors, pulmonologists who are actually telling people what to do, what not to do. So it basically depends on a lot of people as to what they take as gospel, and how they filter the good from the bad or the truth from the untruth. So there are a lot of things that are going around which are very small, but yet at the same time very useful. So at the same time, in these times when time matters a lot, the social media does many times help in providing you information, like, for example, an authentic source of the supply for oxygen, or a message that tells you where you will get a particular medicine. Or, for example, now there are apps that actually tell you what is the hospital bed position, which hospital has a bed with oxygen, which hospital has a bed without oxygen. So you cannot really see everything with the same viewpoint. There are a lot of good things that are going around on social media. For example, a lot of corrective actions are taken based on the tweets that some authentic people make. So if the hospitals are running out of oxygen and there's a tweet, so that tweet is noticed by a lot of people in authority, and that saves a lot of lives. Also, it also adds to a lot of accountability. But it all depends on, one, the source of the message, the authenticity, and whether people can actually filter I don't know why people are so cynic. Even in a situation like this, they will try to mislead, they will try to put in messages that are fake, they will try to spread disinformation, a message will have a hidden agenda. Even when the world is going through a pandemic and everybody's struggling to survive, there are unscrupulous people everywhere. So I would basically say that it all depends on every individual message. You cannot really paint everybody as bad or every message as good. So one has to take a call based on their intelligence and based on their educational levels, and how to deal with a particular situation. And also, I think people are vulnerable to a lot of information if they are in a particular position in a situation. If somebody is desperate for medicine, they will cling on to any message that provides any hope. So social media has been very helpful as well. It's not always that they are spreading misinformation. There's always elements of good information as well.
Mm-hmm. So thanks, Naveen. Amantha, if you could also talk about the effects of social media and digital technologies. How do you see it, and how is it helping in Sri Lanka or perpetuating the misinformation?
Yeah, I mean, we keep grappling with this question of how people can be so callous given the dire situation that we are in right now. But the unfortunate truth is that is human nature. And social media is a reflection of human nature, like everything else that we as humans have manufactured or have come across right through history. And there is good and there is bad, and it's complex. The idea of fake news, the sense of gossip, is not a new phenomenon. It's been there from the time probably humans learned to communicate. What has changed probably now with social media is the fact that the opportunity to manufacture fake news and misinformation and disinformation has arisen and increased, probably unlike any other time in history. And also the speed of which that these things can be sped through and also spread wide has increased. So what we are seeing is that fake news and other gossipy tidbits have kind of overtaken the news arc. Earlier, there was this very clear distinction between journalism and the gossip. Journalists used to do the what we now call legacy media, the newspapers, radio, and print. And it was almost impossible for somebody who was outside to get into those platforms without going through the gatekeepers. There's absolutely nothing like that now. There are no gatekeepers who test whether I am a journalist, whether Naveen or Sufin or Nurul is a journalist, and somebody who's like next door is a journalist. Everybody can be journalist. Now that's the situation we are in. Now we also need to deal with the issue. Why is gossip, why is fake news so popular? I don't know the reason, but I guess like it probably appeals to a certain human nature that makes them more attractive. It could be fear, it could be humor, it could be mirth, it could be anything. Now, that's probably a topic to discuss at another forum. Now, what I probably would want to look at is that we always talk about, when we talk about fake news and misinformation, about these companies and governments. Now, number one, these platforms are business companies. Facebook, even though it's there to connect us, it's there to connect us to make money. Now, what is Facebook's commodity that it sells? Facebook's commodity that it sells is its members. So the more members it has, the more members it interconnects, it makes more money. So it's proactive in that sense. But also in markets like, say, India probably doesn't count into this, but in markets like say, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh and Nepal, they don't react proactively. And they can make huge impacts. I mean, we know what happened with the Resign Modi hashtag when it was kept out of Facebook for 7 hours. 7 hours is a long time when there are 400 million Facebook users in that country. 400 million. And the Sri Lankan population is 20 million. And governments. I don't need to talk about how governments in our region work. We know how they manufacture, put together, paint, all kinds of colors so that the message they want gets through. So we come to this kind of position where what can we do as journalists? I think we need to figure out how journalists, like I said, can stand firm and stand out in this shouting match that includes politicians, film stars, cricketers, our neighbors next door, and even kids going to school. And that's what we need to grapple with. You know, it was almost 60 years ago that we came across this phrase, the medium is the message. And I think for journalism, we need to acquire these new media as our own and make them our own and make sure that we go out and keep putting out authentic journalism, that it stands out and people have access to it. And again, I go back to the type of the research that I've been doing right now. And one thing that stands out is that we, all of us, irrespective of our age, irrespective of where we come from, if we are journalists, we need to become digital native journalists. Because for the world out there, this thing is not alien. This is an extension of their arm or part of their body. So we need to figure out how we take advantage of that and keep doing what we've been doing for, as long as we know that we're doing as journalists.
Thank you. Thanks, Samantha. Nurul, would you like to also say something, how journalists are connecting with the voices on social media in Bangladesh?
No, thank you. I mean, as Naveen earlier said that during this time, media has to educate itself. This is very true because, in other days, usually one newspaper has one reporter assigned to health-related issues. But due to the pandemic, now almost everyone is writing something on pandemic. So, but it's a very much scientific issue. It's not politics. So we know, and we journalists are not experts, but we know how to, how to write the stories or how to present the stories correctly. And we know basically those who work regularly, they know who are the relevant experts. Because, due to the social media, another thing happened that we saw in Bangladesh also, Like it's I mean everybody, I mean anyone can become an expert easily. They come live on Facebook and they are giving some expert opinion. And sometimes some people, they use those information without checking I mean his or her background. For example, all doctors are not pandemic expert, because pandemic, I mean, is doctor is a, I mean, basic degree. They have a doctor, for example, a kidney expert, medicine expert. They have different discipline. At the same time, pandemic is a different discipline. For, I mean, understanding the pandemic, the doctor must have some epidemiological knowledge. So now, for, I mean, for me as a journalist, if I interview any doctor, and then, I mean, without checking his background and give this information, so there will be chances to, I mean, spread inaccurate information. And regarding the vaccination, we at the beginning we also, I mean, faced the similar challenges. Like, and in Bangladesh, it was politics played a part, because the government's opposition parties, they question the quality of the vaccine because it is coming from India, and this is despite the fact that we are using most of our vaccines in our routine immunization program from the same Serum Institute. And then we saw social media flooded with misinformation related to the efficacy and side effects of the vaccine. And then then different organizations, they conducted some surveys to understand the public perception about the vaccine. And there are some interesting findings. Many people, they said that they will never take the vaccine, and of them, majority expressed their doubt about their efficacy, vaccine side effects, quality of vaccine. These all things have been there. But again, the social media also helped in many ways that our previous speaker said. For example, getting oxygen supply. Uh, for I mean, even last month, uh, now our cases over the, I mean, positive rate is coming down. It's like 8%, 9% of the total samples we are testing a day. But even a month ago, it was a huge number, like 23% cases we got every day. So that time, the oxygen was a problem. Even the last year, when the pandemic first started, so people find it difficult to get oxygen supply. And then the social media platform, many people, many young people, many political organizations, they created social media groups, and they help people to find the oxygen supply, even during the need of blood or plasma therapy. I'm not sure whether plasma therapy was so appropriate, but it was somehow popular because of the social media. So I mean, social media has, like, both, as you said, that, I mean, people use it for propaganda or misinformation. At the same time, it helps people to get the correct information. But the thing is that as a journalist, I need to know how to deal with the information. So I need to educate myself. That is, I think, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Nurul. As we are moving towards the end of our webinar, there's just one question that I would like to ask all of my panelists, and I would start with Zophine, if she could talk about what effective methods have been taken to counter this misinformation, and what more do you think needs to be done? If you could talk about it briefly.
Please unmute yourself.
Sorry. So it's the first pandemic unfolding in the digital age. So that's a challenge by itself, and it's not peculiar to Pakistan or South Asia, but it's a global challenge that everyone else is facing. So, so to your question, that what can be done, we have to go on those same platforms, as Amantha has said, and Naveen has also alluded to it, that we need to be vigilant and be as powerful as the misinformation that is spreading. Misinformation is actually, they use ambiguity and uncertainty. So it's actually, if we give them the correct information, and the correct information, I think, in my opinion, the best people are the experts now. and people trust them. People even trust their own doctors. So get the message from them and put it on directly to the people who matter. So this would be my recommendation, that we need to, as journalists, first we need to learn and get informed about this thing, and then pass it on. But it should be accuracy. So accuracy is the key.
So Naveen has talked about that too, that journalists need to be educated. So Amantha, would you like to say something um, on the same, uh, like if you want to share your thoughts on it, that what effective methods have been taken to counter this and what more do you think can be done in this regard?
So at country level, very little action has been taken in Sri Lanka to counter the misinformation. There have been fact-checking endeavors that have launched, both as private projects as well as public projects. So they are there and they have had an impact. But beyond that, there's been very little. And like I said earlier, there have been instances where elected officials have been vessels of misinformation and disinformation. One of the stark examples was when there was this syrup that was popularized as a cure, not a deterrent, a cure for COVID. And we had members of parliament taking it from spoons from inside parliament. And then there were people lining up at this manufacturer's house to get bottles of it. So that is an issue. That's an issue where there has not been correspondingly effective measures compared to the level of the infection that we're facing right now to counter the misinformation. But again, it goes back to, as journalism, as the journalism industry, how we reached this pandemic. We reached it in a kind of like a situation where we were not sure what kind of journalists we were. Were we social media journalists? Were we influencers? Were we legacy media trying to do social media? I think one of the things that the pandemic has shown, we need to be digital native. There is no other way to counter the misinformation, disinformation, fake news, deep fakes, because these are coming not on the printed paper, not on television channels that have broadcasters that use broadcast frequencies, not on radio channels, but on the digital platforms. So we need to be digital natives. And in that way, we need to acquire that medium for ourselves. Now, what we need to be also mindful is that acquiring that medium is not only the message. I think as journalists, we put out the message really well. But in social media, in this digital era, packaging is also important. I mean, I've met really, really good journalists do 45-minute pieces on YouTube. Who has the time to watch 45 minutes on YouTube? We need to kind of like, adapt the packaging to meet the needs of the time. If you're not going to adapt, we are not going to be not ahead, not even in the running pack in this game. I mean, if you look at media organizations that have become successful in this digital age, they have not only adapted, they have also acquired the skills to make sure that they get their message across in such a way that, like I said earlier, not only does it stand out, it also stands firm amidst the noise. And just because COVID is going to go away, and hopefully sooner rather than later, the noise is not going to die down. The noise is going to stay there.
Yeah, thanks.
So
Can
I just add to that?
Sure.
Since we're all journalists here, and we probably the people watching us are also mostly journalists, I think the first service we can do to journalism is stop forwarding messages. the first thing that we need to do is whenever you get a message, please stop, verify it, and then forward. There are plenty of indicators that tell you that the message is a viral message and maybe not an authentic one. For example, WhatsApp has now introduced something which is called forwarded many times kind of a thing, you know. It does not allow you to forward that message to more than one person. So people have found a way around. They would save that message and then again forward it to 10 people. So that's the first thing. When you are forwarding a message as a journalist, you must take the responsibility about the authenticity of that message. If you feel you're forwarding it, then you must believe in that message to be true. If you don't, then please do not forward it. There are many methods to find out. For example, now for Twitter, there are many accounts. So you have, if there's a Twitter account of mine and somebody else makes another account, it's a very simple thing. You just need to see whether it's from a verified account or not. It just says the small tick in a blue, which means it's verified. So we have to employ those small tricks and techniques. Like Mantha said, we have to become digital. The more the messages you get, people do have more resources now to go to Google, to other search engines to find out the truth. If there's something attributed to Mr. X, Y, or Z, people can actually go to the website and find out whether X, Y, or Z did it or not, whether the message originated from them. So even the people who send out these fake messages, even they have become smarter. They also try to make a smart message so that it's not easily detected. They would use a picture, they would use another caption, they would morph an image and try to pass it on as if it was true. In this pandemic times, we really don't have the time to go back and do fact checking. But I think as journalists, one thing we can do is we have to take responsibility for everything that we send out.
Yeah.
And you cannot just say forwarded as received and get over with it.
Thanks. Thank you, Naveen. Nurul, if you would like to just conclude briefly, then we'll move towards our question answer.
No, just like one sentence. Yeah, as the speaker says, that we journalists should always remember we should not forget the basic rules of journalism or basic tools that we use before we present a story or write a report. That's the one thing. And another thing which is true for our governments in South Asia or in Bangladesh also, our governments always try to avoid media. That's the biggest mistake they do in this period of time. Instead, they should, establish strong spokesperson mechanism so that anything, at any point of time, journalists can ask and verify or check or get the information. Then it will help to dispel all the misconceptions or misinformation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your valuable insight. I'm now going to move towards the questions sent by our audience. So we have a first question for Mr. Naveen by Mr. Irshad Lashari. He says, hello, Mr. Naveen. First, we share deep concern over India's situation and praying for speedy recovery of our neighbor. My question is, why the world has limited just on vaccination? I ask you how China overcame this virus in beginning without any vaccine. Is vaccine the only solution? Would you like to answer this, Naveen?
Yeah, sure. So there are two parts to this question. The first part is, as we know of today, as we know from the scientific world today, vaccination is an answer for sure. But like in any pandemic, I think isolation and maintaining your proper protocol for COVID is probably a bigger thing than vaccine. So if you can avoid the virus before you get to the stage where you need medicines or vaccine definitely is a preventive thing. And what we have seen is that people who are vaccinated, it's not as if they will not get the virus, but the damage done to them after the vaccination is going to be minimized compared to people who don't have the vaccine. The second part, how China controlled it, I really don't want to go into the details of it, but the only thing I would say is that when it comes to China, we really don't know what they show and what is. There were many stories that we saw, which even talked about thousands and thousands of people going missing, and there were reports about satellite images of mass fires and stuff. Now, I don't know. I'm not saying that's true or that's false. I'm not into it because I'm not aware about it. But the fact is, when it comes to China, we really don't know what they are, saying and what they're doing. So somebody who inside China has to answer that question.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So the next question is for Zophine. When a minister says that get vaccinated at your own risk, then what credibility remains? Don't you think government itself has given the path to myths about COVID, especially in Pakistan? Zophine?
I think so. You're right. I think that there has been a lot more confusion created by our politicians and by our government leaders, officials who have been very, I think, irresponsible. And that is why I keep saying that there should have been one person who should be the spokesperson in this situation, and somebody who is a doctor, who's an informed person. And yes, you're absolutely right that there's been a lot of ambiguity and fears and confusion created by our politicians.
Okay, thank you.
And I would like to just, if there is time, I would just like to counter that question. I would like to respond to the question on China, if I may, Naveen. Given our, I don't know, I'm not speaking for any other South Asian country, but my own, that, maybe in China, the SOPs are very strictly followed. But in Pakistan, at least, I know that people do not. Because half the time, even if they're wearing a mask, it is like really put just on the mouth and the nose is left open. They do not believe in social distancing. They do not even believe that COVID exists. So I think that because of that, we need the vaccine more than maybe, and China was able to do it, manage their thing because of the discipline perhaps that they follow or are made to follow.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Zophine, Amanta, and Noveen and Nurul, who just left for iftar. It's iftar time in Bangladesh. So on this we conclude. Thank you so much for your wonderful insight today on this topic. Very, very crucial and very important topic. Thanks a lot again. I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Salma, and all of you. Stay safe. The virus is nobody's friend, so you have to, take care of yourself.
You too,
and it
Naveen.
doesn't respect borders.
Okay, bye.
Take care.